is Congressman Adam Smith, who is the ranking Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee. Thank you so much for joining me. You have been in touch. You have been briefed. What can you tell us about the situation in Israel that we might not know yet?
Well, I mean, you've covered it reasonably well. I think it's good to frame sort of what the U.S. response is and what our priorities are. I mean, number one priority, obviously, is to get whatever help to Israel that they need, and the president and the White House team is in communication with them on that. Offer that support to Israel. Number two, crucially, work with our allies in the region to try and make sure that this conflict doesn't expand, and specifically that focuses on Hezbollah up north in Lebanon and Syria. So there's talk with various allies about that. And then third, to make sure that we protect U.S. interests in the region. That's why DOD has moved some assets into the region and is focused on that. Now, for now, that's what we can do. The big question that comes is, what if we need some sort of specific aid package? How do we work that through the process? Those conversations are beginning between the White House and Congress as well.
Let me ask you, excuse me, about the U.S. carrier strike group headed into the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. You said it is to be there just in case tell us what your understanding as the top Democrat on the Armed Services Committee is of the reason for this carrier to be there. And as you answer that, what should the extent of the U.S. military involvement in this crisis be?
Sure. Just to understand, the U.S. military is not going to get involved in terms of sending, troops or our assets to fight with Israel against Hamas. We will certainly support Israel as our ally in terms of, providing equipment, military ammunition if they need it, other forms of support. We're there because we're kind of worried more broadly about Iran. And keep in mind, we have U.S. forces in Iraq. We have U.S. forces in Syria. Iran has various militia groups in those regions that they back. There is concern that Iran will seize this opportunity to launch further attacks against U.S. interests and U.S. forces. We have forces in Syria primarily because of ISIS, which has not completely gone away. There are large prison camps with ISIS fighters there. And Iran, through its Shia militias, have been harassing those elements. Iran has also looked for ways to destabilize Iraq. So that is the reason that we have that increased presence, is because of our concern about what Iran might do with its proxies to specifically target U.S. interests or to further destabilize the region.
It sounds like, is there credible intelligence that is something that is imminent, or this is an insurance policy?
Well, forgive me, Dana, but there's credible intelligence in the sense of just your average intelligence.
Okay.
There's no doubt that this war benefits Iran. There's no doubt that Iran is the number one backer of Hamas, that has been providing them with the missiles. And so, yeah.
On that, what have you seen evidence that shows that Iran was, aside from just being a financial backer of Hamas, was integral in the planning of this attack?
I can't talk about anything classified, so I can't get into that. But again, I think we should just rely on the logic of the situation, both in terms of what Iran has always supplied to Hamas and also to Hezbollah, but also Iran's clear interests in trying to stop the movement of the peace effort between Israel and Saudi Arabia and other Arab states. Iran, fears that peace effort, and it's perfectly logical that they would want to launch an attack like this or encourage an attack like this to disrupt that process. So yes, Iran is definitely in the middle of this. Well, how specifically on this attack? That we'll have to look at some of the intel on that, and like I said, some of that we're not going to reveal.
Yeah.
But clearly, Iran's a problem.
Yeah. The Iranian regime as a problem here is certainly an understatement. I'm sure you would agree. Adam Smith, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate the chance.